Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 143 of Into the Outer Realms. I am your very dressed up this evening Interstellar host, Joey Medea. For those of you in the midst of Hanukkah, I hope it's going very well. And those preparing for Christmas with the storm coming in and Kwanzaa, I hope that your travel arrangements or your plans with your family, we're already adjusting our plans. So with that said, I want to jump in right tonight. We're going to try to keep today's show to an hour or just a little more with our guest. This is an unusual situation, and I think quite wonderful. It certainly intrigued me when I was first asked by Mark Eddy what I thought about having Samuel on the show. Samuel is not the author of the book that we're going to talk about this evening, which is the Thiaoouba prophecy. It was originally called Abduction to the Ninth Planet. I am going to ask Samuel if he knows when and why the title was changed, because Abduction to the Ninth Planet, similar to Tanya and I, maybe some other situations, abduction is a very negative word. Michel got up in the middle of the night, got dressed, left a note for his wife, and went out and got on the spaceship. That doesn't really qualify as an abduction. So it'll be interesting to hear that. Those are the kinds of things we're going to talk about today. But Samuel read the book, became very passionate about it, and went to see the author in Australia, where he was living very quietly. And he's going to tell you that story tonight. It makes me think of Frank Neidhart when he went to see Black Elk and wound up producing the book Black Elk Speaks. Well, Black Elk, when Neidhart showed up in the middle of a snowstorm, a blizzard in the South Dakota plains, Black Elk said, "Oh, you're finally here." And this didn't quite go that way. So again, I want to, when we bring Samuel on, I want to switch gears and really give him the stage. So before I roll the opening tonight, one more thing that I want to say, and that's Carl Sagan is the most famous for the expression, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But it was also said by Thomas Jefferson in 1808. It was said by Pierre-Simon Laplace, Theodore Flournoy, and also by Marcello Truzzi. So the Europeans and the Americans all had this idea. But Stanton Friedman, who I met a couple days before he passed several years ago, said an absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So this comes down to faith. Those of you who have read my book review for this book, you'll see that I tried to be balanced. Samuel read it and agreed, thankfully. On February 23rd, I'm going to do a follow-up show where I will talk about some of the internal inconsistencies and some things that might be problematic from a religious or from a gender or sexual perspective, and we're not going to talk about those things today. Michel wrote this book and Samuel didn't, and I want to focus what he did. So I want to welcome everyone, roll the opening, and then come back with Samuel, and we were going to have a very good hour-long discussion, this journey of passion on his part.
There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey
into the outer realms.
All right, please welcome my guest, Samuel Chong. Good evening, Samuel. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, let's start. Before you read this book, which admittedly changed your life and set you on this quest, tell the audience a little bit about your background and what brought you to the book.
Well, I was born in Beijing, China in 1978. I came here at the age of 15, went to high school, went to UC Berkeley, went to London School of Economics, and also went to Universidad Carlos III de Madrid. I studied economics, economic history, and financial analysis. So I was focused on making money in the financial world. But then I couldn't find a job, and I became a paralegal and became a Chinese translator and certified court interpreter. And I did pretty well until I read this book. And I used to go to church, and I still go to the church. And but in the past, before I went to the church, I was just someone who was taking advantage of the free meals provided by the church, and also the social environment of getting to know more people to develop my own business connections. I didn't believe anything that the church said or what the Bible said. I believed that Christ was just a science fictional character, like fictional character. I mean, there was no way for someone to appear all of a sudden and to perform all the miracles. So I didn't believe any word in the Bible. But this book, after I read it, it changed everything.
When did so the book was published? Which year?
It was published in 1993.
Okay, and you read it when?
I read it in 2014.
Okay, 2014. So you didn't just read this book and go, wow, this is interesting, and it gives me some food for thought, and there's some good lessons here, all of which we're going to talk about tonight. You took an extraordinary step. Before we get into that extraordinary step, can you set up for the audience how this book came about? Who was Michel Desmarquet, who died 4 years ago, you told me? Yes. And how did he come to write this extraordinary book?
Well, he was a Frenchman who was living in Australia at that time when this event happened in 1987, when he was taken suddenly by this beautiful 9-foot-tall ET who was really friendly and compassionate about telling him a lot of things that we should all know about. And so he later on, after 9 days, he came back to Earth, and according to their instructions, he was to write a book. That's what he did. And then he kind of tried to promote the messages in the book, and not many people listened, even though it was selling very well. It was very controversial back then. And later in his life, he went to Vietnam and died about 4 years ago.
Oh, wow. He wound up in Vietnam. Okay, that's interesting. I'm editing a dissertation by a female pastor from Vietnam today. So a nice synchronicity. That's good. So he wakes up out of a sleep at 2:30 in the morning. This is in June of 1987. He gets dressed and he leaves a note for his wife. I'll be back in 10 days. And he goes away in this egg-shaped craft with my understanding is part of the reason he was chosen was he was not a writer. So they used two examples, Victor Hugo and Plato, who would extemporize or make it their own. And had he had any prior paranormal experiences before this?
No, not at all. He was just a landscaper and a farmer in Australia. And he really didn't even know how to type. He didn't know how to use a computer. And his son is the same type of person. His son also doesn't know how to type and doesn't use a computer. So his whole family was this kind of a very bound to the nature and not so tech kind of people.
Right. Has it been revealed, or did he or anyone else why? That's always the big question. So when I have experiencers on the show. The audience will know Wes Roberts, for instance, who had experiences all his life. The question becomes, why me? Did Michel ask that question?
Yeah, he asked that question during his trip, and then he was told that there are two reasons. First reason is that he was a man of action. He took immediate action of what he was supposed to do, and including writing this book. And the second reason, is the main reason, is that he was one of the few people on Earth at that time who had 80 past lives already. And according to the ETs, only like Sokos, what they call Sokos, people who had 80 past lives, could survive for 9 days on the planet, maximum 9 days.
Right.
And other people couldn't survive for that long.
Right. So those of us who try to live on the spiritual track, try to break our cycle of samsara and overcome our karma, all the different terms, and go, okay, so I'm going to do a handful of lives. They tell him that it takes somewhere between 500 and 15,000. Was that disheartening to you? Was it inspiring? What was your reaction when you read that?
My reaction is that if it takes that long to progress to the next level, then I think I need to work harder. I need to follow the teachings of Christ, or maybe to be more spiritual and to maybe learn the shortcuts of growing more spiritually and to progress at a much shorter time. Perhaps maybe in my next lifetime I'll be on category 7 or 9 or something.
There you go. That's good. So it's inspirational. It is, and it's also it's not so much a prophecy, and you say that in your talking points, in your background material. So it was originally called Abduction to the Ninth Planet. At what point was the title changed, and why?
Well, in the very beginning, he was trying to catch people's attention by using the word abduction, because abduction is always very sensational. But then a guy named Tom Chaco suggested, just why not change it to Thiaoouba prophecy, just to be analogical to the other popular book called Celestial Prophecy. And that's why that's why in the early 90s, maybe a few years after the book came out, it was changed to that title at the suggestion of Tom Chaco.
Yeah, and I think that's right. Abduction is very sensational, but it's also very dark, and it's the idea of, they talk about Barney Hill's shoes being scuffed because he was literally dragged, and that's kind of disturbing. So let's talk about to me, this is the most interesting. I think this is why I really said yes to having you come on the show. Tell the audience, you finished the book, and then tell the audience about the journey that you took.
Well, I was actually shocked about the content, especially regarding the biblical stories, how that came about, and explained everything that I wanted to know about Jesus and Christ. And it connected all the dots I had, questions about the Bible. I was extremely shocked that this book is so well written, so well explained, that it's so reasonable and logical to me, that I decided to do a lot of more research and investigations on the matters or facts claimed in the book. But then I also read a postscript. It says there are more incredible things that he was not allowed to write in the book because we were far from understanding them. So that got me extremely, kind of a little bit upset, because like, what's more incredible? This book is already incredible enough to me. I mean, all the things that mentioned in the book about the Great Pyramid, the parallel universe in the Bermuda Triangle, and who is Moses, and the stories of Sodom and Gomorrah, and the Germany in World War II, and the tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village, Japan, that people can still visit to. What's more incredible about it? And what's more that we still cannot understand? What's more that I cannot still understand? That I was so frustrated. I wanted to know more, so I decided to track him down and to ask him in person. So that's when I found out that he was living in Phu Quoc Island in southern Vietnam at that time. And I didn't know his exact address. I only knew that some tourists took a photo of his bungalow.
Oh, okay.
I grabbed that photo and I printed out and showed it to the taxi driver after I landed on that island. And the taxi driver took me there. There I met him.
How did so I told the story, I think you heard it from the green room, that Frank Neihart, when he traveled through the snowstorm to go see Black Elk, the Lakota Holy Man, he said, you finally made it. Is that what Michel Desmarquet said to you?
No, he was annoyed because he was a very private person.
Mm-hmm.
He was happy to welcome the tourists who happened to visit Phu Quoc, Vietnam, who happened to meet him, but he was not really welcoming to a person like me, who intentionally tried to locate him, asking questions about the book. So he was really annoyed for the first 3 days.
Oh, the first 3 days. So
Yes.
Did you stay locally on the island and kind of go by every day hoping he would invite you in, or how did that?
He had a small tourist motel at that time, and I stayed at his motel, just trying to be close to him. And then after he learned that I was able to help him to follow up with a contract that he signed with a Chinese publisher, his attitude changed.
Of course, right. Was he and his wife separated as a result of this
Yes.
book? And I don't want to get details or anything. I do want to point out though, and I asked you before the show, it was related to the book and his experience.
Yes, his wife didn't believe what happened to him. His wife believed that he was having an affair with another woman. And to this day, she still does not believe what happened to him.
Wow, there is, and I'm not going to go into great detail, but one of the cryptids that I'm fascinated with is the unfortunately named Mothman. But this interesting cryptid that's tied to the Thunderbird, it's tied to the Garuda, which I think is much more at the core of it. And Mothman was because of Batman and sensationalism. But there was a man named Woody Derenberger who met an interstellar being named Indrid Cold, and there are some speculations that when he would disappear and profess to go to another planet, he was actually having an affair. So this becomes unfortunate. So he paid a big price for this. So finally he changes his mind and he lets you in. And how does the relationship develop between the two of you?
You know, the main thing of me visiting him was to find out what he didn't write in the book, what is so incredible. He didn't tell me the first trip that I visited him because he was trying to ask me to help him to get a book published in China and Taiwan. And I was trying to please him so that he could tell me what that was.
Right.
So right about when the book was about to be published in mainland China, and he sent me an email through his niece. He invited me to visit him for a second time so that he could tell me that one thing in person. That's why I took a second trip and visited him. And a few months later, he passed away.
Wow, a few months later. Okay. Do you and again, this is speculation unless he told you out. Did he know that his life was coming to an end and he felt like he needed to share that with someone and you were the person, that secret, or do you know?
Well, two parts to the answer. One is that he really didn't know he was going to die. He said he was going to live until the age of 95 or 105. So I was actually expecting to visit him for a third time. So I didn't ask all the questions I really wanted to. I was enjoying my time over there. So now I really regret that I didn't ask.
Yeah, we just don't know. So
But the second part of the question is that during my first trip, he said that Tao, the ET, told him that someone was going to visit him. And he said, probably that's going to be me. So he knew someone was coming to him to do something. But when I tried to ask him more about it, being a curious person that he just didn't elaborate.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So it's closer to Neihart and Black Elk than I originally thought. That's very interesting. Let's talk. So you were upset and motivated to travel a good distance to talk to him because of this idea of the secret. When he told you the secret, which I understand that you can't reveal, Did it make sense to you why he held it out and respected that?
I really understood a lot of more things after I learned about it. I understood his frustration, and I understood his anger and upsetness of writing the postscript. I mean, if you read the book, you're going to know that in the main text of the book is really calm and really loving and really compassionate. Everything is said to be a factual, very factual tone.
Right.
But when you read the postscript, you feel the anger, the frustration, the kind of the other side of the coin, the other side of Michel Desmarquet. That it seemed that he was kind of uh, wasting his frustration at the readers.
Yeah.
And I totally understood why after I learned about that one thing.
Okay. So let's back up a little and get some context, and we'll move forward back to that. So he comes back from his 10 days. If I understand correctly, within a few days, he writes this whole thing out. Kind of like all at a go over a course of many hours, or?
I think it took about a few months for him to
it did. Okay.
writing the entire book. He would forget a lot of details, and then suddenly his memories would come back because in the book it's written that when he forgets something, then Tao or the ETs would help him to remember the details. That's what happened. So he really had the information downloaded to him, and maybe they uploaded information to him to help him to remember the details of what happened to him on that planet.
Yeah, because there's so much. It's a fairly big book, and the details, especially going back to Mu and Atlantis, and here's how this was all geographically laid out. We'll get into all of that. Did he tell you, or was there anyone? Obviously, you didn't meet the wife because she was gone. He had a son, though. Did you meet his son?
I didn't meet him in person, but we had a lot of telephone conversations.
Okay. Did he go into like a trance and sort of automatic write it, or do you know?
His son didn't tell me that.
Okay.
But his son believed what happened to him.
He did. Okay, he did believe it. What did he believe it immediately, or was it a journey over time? He just did. He just knew.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is something about a book. Some people after reading it just believe everything to be true immediately.
Yes. I have to say, I went out and did so much research because I was like, okay, so I have to talk about this book and I have to review it, and overall, I say out everyone should read it. They should read it because it's a good reminder of things. And if you're interested in ancient alien theory, astronaut theory, Eric von Daniken, the work of Graham Hancock, man, it all aligns. It really all aligns. It's a wonderful someone who I'm very fond of, who's been on the show 3 times, Reverend Michael Carter. His review just says this is true. I believe it. And that is the vast majority of people. You really have to dig for someone to say, this is bunk, this is a delusion, this is made up, this is a fraud. And I was absolutely astonished by that in a very, very positive way. Because there's so much to consider. What was his journey from finished manuscript to actually getting it published?
Well, for a long time, maybe a few years, he couldn't get a publisher to have the book published because he insisted the publisher to publish as a nonfiction. Right. And everyone at that time believed it was a science fiction. Mm-hmm. So he waited, and in the postscript, he mentioned that it's probably done by purpose because they were waiting for the right time to have a book to be published because the timing was everything, and they could time it to the right second. That's when, after the former Soviet Union broke up, and the book was published soon after, believing it to be the right timing. So a lot of people actually helped him to speak out and to speak in public lectures, including Michael Meanwell, Tom Chaco, and a few others. And I think right now it's also a time for us to consider the things written in the book, because we are living a very interesting time.
We are. We are. Every day there's things that are coming out that are saying this is a time of chaos and opportunity, crisis and change, and a lot. I talk a lot on the show, and Tanya and I, my wife and I, talk about keeping your vibration alive, high, and aligning to those higher energies. We'll talk about that. I was, with things like this, you say we need as much help as we could get to believe in the veracity and to tell people about it with full confidence. The original manuscript was lost, and that just feels so like how did that happen? Like I have the original manuscripts of my screenplays and my novels and my plays, and I take very good care of them. Do you know how that wound up happening?
Well, he was so depressed after he finished writing this book, because no one believed him. Very few people, I would say, including the scientists in the UFO ufologist community.
Right.
And he had a divorce, and a friend told him to maybe try to visit Vietnam to change the environment. That's what he did. And during the shipping of his belongings, and the packages were lost. So that's when the manuscript was lost.
Wow.
But he had a book published in French as well. And after translating it from English back into French again, but I compared the two versions. Actually, the English version is more complete, more thorough than the French version nowadays.
Interesting. Okay, so there's a note in the book which is really important. I kind of went, okay, thank you for doing this. The book was edited and corrected by Tom Chaco, Louise Ofkar, manager second. In agreement with the author, all changes are documented except for spelling errors and grammar corrections. So I feel confident, and I'm sure you feel confident, we're getting a close rendition of what that original writing was.
Yes, I believe this is an accurate reflection or translation of the original manuscript.
Right. Let's see. You mentioned let's do this. Let's spend some time on this. You mentioned doing some research to verify things in the book, which is really all we can do, right? That's the responsible thing to do. That was my approach. What are the 2 or 3 or 4 things that you research that you feel, folks, if you have any doubts, go back to these, because this is hard, verifiable data?
The easiest fact written in the book that people can go out and research is to look up the place named Shingo Village, Japan, because in the book it talks about the tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village, Japan. That's when Jesus was born from the Virgin Mary after the embryo being implanted by the ETs, went to in his later life and then died there. So to speak, that the Jesus who was originally born from Virgin Mary, who couldn't perform miracles, traveled to India through China and died in Japan. And the Christ who could perform miracles was actually an ET, took on the body of Jesus, whose main purpose was to preach spirituality and love to the people at that time. And he actually died on the cross and resurrected 3 days after, just to show people at that time that there was life after death and there's reincarnation. But for some reason, the concept of reincarnation was removed by the church councils, the Catholic church councils, in the later years. So this is something that people can research. And the other fact is that when the author Michel Desmarquet went into their spaceship, they disinfected him using yellow light and blue light. Yes. And I did some research on blue light. And Harvard Medical School had a paper, research paper, on the antiviral, antibacterial effect of blue light. And it actually documented some of the experiments and clinical trials that people did. And it does have an antibacterial, antiviral effect. And the other thing would be the Bermuda Triangle.
Mhm.
There are a lot of planes and ships who gone vanish near that area. And also, David Paulides, a very good researcher, wrote a series of books called Missing 411, documenting hikers or people who gone missing or vanish in the national parks in the US. So, according to Michel Desmarquet's Thiaoouba prophecy, there are kind of like warps or portals in different locations on Earth near the in space that really suck nearby objects or people into a parallel universe where time stops and people don't feel any pain or hunger or thirst. So David Paulides documented some of the corpses that people found later. That it seems that the people didn't feel any pain. There were so many injuries that kind of like self-inflicted,
Mhm.
and it kind of corroborates of what Michel Desmarquet's description in the parallel universe, where people just didn't feel any pain. So that kind of matches what David Paulides described, um, how like the corpse that he found.
Right.
Um, and the other would be the Great Pyramid of Egypt.
Mhm.
According to Michel Desmarquet's book, the Great Pyramid, actually any pyramid, is actually a tool to capture cosmic energy. It's actually an energy center so that the user, if knew how to use it correctly, could communicate with people from other planets and could actually make rain by using it in a certain way. So there's a research um, by one of my friends who actually did a lot of studies on the effects of pyramid structures, and he says that it is indeed an energy center that can actually kind of emit certain energy through the upper point of the Great Pyramid of the pyramid. Some people call it the orgone energy. And
Mhm.
he actually found some of the researchers done by the UK scientists that this kind of energy can make clouds in the sky so that rain would fall.
Right.
So a lot of things like this, and there are other things like the ET bases on the far side of the moon. This book
Mhm.
explains why that's the case, and also life on Mars. And this book explains, indeed, about 300,000 years ago there was life on Mars, but no
Yeah.
longer because of the cooling down of the core.
Right. So let's first I want to say David Police, I've read all of his books, listened to him on Coast to Coast, watch his documentaries, former police investigator, incredibly credible person, and that's a wonderful parallel. The blue light to me, that discovery didn't come until considerably after the publication of the book. That blue light one really, that's so strong. That one is so strong because it's so specific, and now they're applying it in medical. There was a nurse who kind of, took that forward that I just saw a documentary on. Again, the Bermuda Triangle too. 1974. I'm a young kid and I'm reading Charles Berlitz's book, so that jumped out at me too. Also, there is a French researcher, and then there's a woman, and they've done so much work on pyramids as energy centers, and that the Nile had gone right near them, and they used the water and they converted it, and that they're not burial tubes. I was with you with all of that. I absolutely agree that all of those things are hard to deny. We're going to have folks, return guests for our 3-year anniversary at the end of January. Constance Victoria Briggs, who wrote an encyclopedia and wrote a book on the mysteries of the moon, talking about the dark side. Another verification point. That's awesome. How about the space needles? That's pretty compelling too. If you could talk about that.
Yes, it talks about the interventions of the ETs trying to protect us. So one of the evidence would be in the 1960s, the US government, the NASA, released twice hundreds of millions of needles into space in order to improve the telecommunication system of Earth. So they're trying to kind of using the copper needles to make the signal stronger. But then, according to this book, the ETs from Thiaoouba believe that it's going to cause harm to us. So they kind of collected all the needles and make them disappear. So that's actually what happened. So people can look up Project Westford. That's the name of the project by NASA. In 1963 and 1965, they tried twice, but failed.
I'm just going to write that for the audience because that was another one that was very compelling. I wasn't aware, and it seemed so odd when I read it. What, thousands of needles and say, like, what's going on? But it's all there, folks. You can read declassified papers and all kinds of things. So I'm going to put that there for them. Okay, let's get into. I don't want to talk. I don't want to say that they're necessarily controversial things, but they were very interesting to me. So these are very, very advanced beings. So abduction to the 9th planet. What is the 9th planet? Where's Earth in relation to it? And how does that work? Let's unpack that first.
So according to this book, there are a total of 9 different categories of planet in the universe. We on Earth are living on category 1 planet, the lowest category, like elementary school students. The Thiaoubans, live on category 9 planet, which is the highest level. And the higher than 9, if it's higher than 9, that would be the source, the great ether, the creator of the universe. So they're like mentors to us, trying to guide us to the right direction. And we also know about the stories about the grays. And according to Michel Desmarquet, he was allowed to reveal that the grays are also from a category 1 planet. So I always try to tell people, if the government is trying to work with ETs, why not to work with the best? Why work with people who are from the same category of planets? I mean, we're the same category 1. I mean, if you want to learn something, you learn from the best. Learn from the Thiaoubans. Learn from category 9 planet inhabitants. So that's actually the gist. Actually, the Jewish people originally came from category 3 planet.
Yeah, I found that interesting. Moses and so in the book it says the Jewish people truly are the chosen people. They were brought here to help with the ascension of the planet, Samuel?
Well, they were the chosen people because the Thiaoubans believe that they should help the Jewish people make an example for other people on Earth to learn and to follow the right direction. So they're chosen by the Thiaoubans. So they're the chosen people.
Right. That was interesting. So the Thiaoubans are they're ascended. Earth is known as the planet of sorrows. And this is a conversation, this across the boards. Folks, I'm going to have a guest on next week, Patricia Corey, who channels the High Syrian Council. And Earth is this category 1 planet. We are, because there's this big gap between our morality and our technology. And it's a real problem. And Simon, we're definitely going to talk about it. But before you leave tonight, these warnings that they give us. But I do want to talk about a couple of kind of they remind me of the ascended beings on Star Trek that can talk down a little, can be a little impatient, can be a little stern, almost like a tough love parent. They also say that sometimes they had to take necessary action to protect or destroy a certain race or population, that they assist, guide, and sometimes punish in their appointed role as guardians. And this really felt to me like the Old Testament God of wrath. I went, whoa, okay, this is so Old Testament here. They talk about using a blue beam to obliterate giant cockroaches and red ants the size of cows that are attacking these primitive human beings. And they really do kind of feel like the ancient astronaut theory of when they came at various stages and intervened like Sodom and Gomorrah, that they were like gods. How did, as someone who didn't really see value or authenticity in the church. What was your response to that, and where are you now with that?
I mean, I really want to congratulate you. You caught the right important point of this
Okay.
book. Yeah,
Okay.
really want to congratulate you. I would say that's actually one of the key things, one of the main warnings on this book is trying to tell us, is that if you really learn about the stories in the Bible from the Jewish ancient scriptures, what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah was actually not mainly due to sodomy. It was due
Right.
to the people living in the two cities punishing the compassionate, loving inhabitants, and not to really focusing on. I mean, they just kind of tortured and killed the people who helped others.
Right.
And so this is why, this is actually the main reason of the Thiaoubans distracting the two cities. They were setting a very bad example to the people who were in contact with them. If you think about it, if you have a cancer tumor in your body, would you like to keep it or would you want to get rid of it? Because
Right.
it's really spreading, it could spread to other parts of your body. So this is a very useful and very kind of an interesting analogy. And I think if we really don't change ourselves in the future, I think we have to be a little bit careful about what's going to happen. Remember, like the book of Enoch was under the instruction of the Thiaoubans, actually the Jehovah's, to write after Enoch was taken by them. And remember, a few decades later, Noah, the great grandson of Enoch, was told to build an ark. And I think you can also kind of use imagination to think about why Michel Desmarquet was told to write this book in the early 90s.
Yeah.
After he had this encounter or experience. Is there a similar analogy to Enoch and Noah? And I think people would make this kind of conjecture and association, and I think definitely everyone should get this book and to figure it out.
There you go. Okay, so you're not going to tell them; they need to figure it out on their own. It's interesting. Do you agree with Michel Desmarquet? 6 years after, right? He had to write just what they told him. They didn't want Plato. They didn't want Victor Hugo. They just wanted him to write what they said. It was that important. But then he goes and he does his postscript, and he says, "Listen, you need to read this book 3 times. If you don't understand it, it's your fault. It's on you." You've probably read it more than 3 times.
Yeah.
Is there some kind of I mean, I know when I read a book, I highlight it in different colors and I date when I read it. And the best books, when you go back to them, they speak to you, like they unpeel like an onion. Was that your experience? Did something really click the 3rd time?
Yeah, actually, what happened was that the first time I was reading it, I was first fascinated by the stories in the Bible, and also, but in the very beginning, I was focused on the ET technologies, but I
Yeah.
was really interested in the Bible stories too. So the second time, I concentrated myself into what the book wrote about the biblical stories and how everything was connected. Jehovah and Thiaoouba, they sound similar.
Yes.
And the third time when I read it, I focused more on the meaning of life. We are actually part of God because when God created every one of us, it inserted a tiny portion of itself to each one of us. So when we seek for answers, we shouldn't rely on religious leaders or government or the government. We should look ask ourselves, our heart, and to follow our intuition or guidance, because the kingdom of God is within you. It's mentioned in the Bible. So I was more focused on that the third time I read it. But each time when I read it, I just feel like, oh, how come I didn't catch that the previous time that I read it? Something new came out when I read it for another time. So this is the amazing part of the book. It's very dense with a lot of information, and every time when you read it, something new comes out.
Right, that's very good. I'm revisiting all the Grail romances now. So Percival. You can read them as knights fighting to win ladies and storming castles. You could also read it as a coded ascension book, going through different levels, the sun, the moon, moving from the father to the son. And I'm starting to feel I'm going to reread this book and read it at a different level, because you're right. As I went through it, there's so much information, historical information and facts and figures and population shifts, and which all feel, according to Graham Hancock and some of the other more credible historian, archaeologists, journalists, researchers, all felt very in line. So I think that's all. I think that is all very important. So let's talk about this. I think we've gotten to the point where I think you and I can talk about this. So, and again, for the audience, if they didn't catch it, because it's really something. So Mary is seated with a star person. So it aligns pretty nicely with the Bible in a way. He lives his life, and he comes to 30 when he goes off and he goes to India. And I've read when Jesus was in India, and I'm fascinated, and Shingo tomb and all of that. Then a fully formed, because they can do this, they can create almost like a golem or a tulpa, but more, comes with the ability to do the things to bring the message forward. The church, the councils, the gatekeepers and all. The biggest problem I have, and I mentioned it in my book review, is if the Thiaoubans did this with the intention of elevating thing and making teachings and all, but Catholicism and Christianity kind of got corrupted, and the Crusades and waging wars and speaking out against this group and this group and suppress. Are the Thiaoubans, in the same way that if you believe in Anunnakian theory, that the Anunnaki came here, changed our DNA, or that the Syrians gave us 12 strands of DNA, others took away. Are these higher intelligent beings in any way culpable for the mess that humanity has found itself in?
Well, I think we have our own free will. And I think some of the other theories are just theories, and they don't have any kind of reliable proof or kind of foundations or something
Right.
like that. And I think, but this book tells that we have our own free will. So we determine our actions, we determine our future, and they do not intervene unless they have to. For example, they didn't intervene during World War II by taking out Hitler, even though Hitler was killing a lot of people at that time. When they tried to prevent Germany from being the first country to develop the atomic bomb, they kind of made an illusion to Heisenberg, so that he wrote a report to Hitler saying that the atomic bomb wouldn't be able to be developed during the war. So that caused Hitler to give out the plan. So they intervene to cause minimal interference to us, just to give us the opportunity to mend our ways on our own, to give us the opportunity to really figure out how to correct our actions and how to be more spiritual. So I think they're in no way trying to or intentionally trying to cause a lot of issues to us.
Right.
And I think there are a lot of science fictions out there. I don't believe any of those.
Gotcha. Right. Okay. So that makes it easy. So you said that you went to the church for meals and for networking and for the the reasons that a lot of us go to the Knights of Columbus or the various even the Masons, the different kinds of things like that. Have you embraced Jesus, but sort of outside of the church, or are you a committed Christian or Catholic at this point?
I follow the teachings of Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
but I don't follow the church or the organized religions. I think the church is actually, religion is actually one of the main curses on earth.
Yeah.
It's actually listed as number 3 or number
I
4.
believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, just follow and just to really read what Jesus said. And that's actually the best advice on being more spiritual. Or maybe another religious figure, not to follow the organization, but just to really look inside of yourself and to see what feels right, what resonates to you.
Right. So because our time is getting a little short, let's get to it's not prophecy, but it is warning. What are the four, I believe there are four or five things that human beings really have to figure these out or we're going to be in trouble?
Yes, number 1 is money. So, yeah, so the big farm and the big oil and so all those are looking after money, and a lot of people don't realize how things are running. I happen to be able to translate another book um, written by supposedly the highest chair of secret society that was started in Germany, and that explains a lot of things about that organization and how they influence the politicians of the world using sometimes supernatural abilities.
Yeah.
And if you know this book, you know that people can levitate by practicing certain psychic practices. And but the second most dangerous thing would be the politicians. And politicians are puppets, and we see that the Democrats are fighting Republicans and vice versa, but we don't see what's really going on behind the scenes. They kind of change powers after 4 or 8 years, but there are people who don't change behind. And the third would be journalists and drugs, I think. Yeah. And so so that's pretty
It's interesting. It's interesting that they lump journalists and drugs together, but that's how they present. But yes, there are real problems with the fourth estate because it's a business and it's corrupt and it's all run by. These are things, folks, that that I and Craig and I talk a lot about on this show. And religion is in there too.
Yeah, religion is number 4. Yes.
Yeah, the corruption of the. So I study a lot about the esoteric societies, the secret societies, all of those kinds of things. In the Quran, there are the smokeless fire, right? The plasma beings, the jinn. Is there a place in this Thiaouban cosmosphere for the jinn?
Well, it explains about ghosts,
Mm-hmm.
like what ghost is, like electrons that kind of attract each other through static energy, and because they have memories, they can remember certain things that when the person was alive. So, and about the jinn, I think there are other entities that we don't see, and they do exist, but there's nothing to be afraid of. I mean, yeah, but there are also other ETs too, who visit us, who
Yeah.
don't intervene with us, like the Grace, even though they implanted 150 or so devices on people, they cause no harm. And there are people who imagine, or people who say there are certain scary experiences that they were abducted. I would encourage them to look into the secret government programs.
Right.
And I
The
think,
My Labs and so forth.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, excellent. Wow, this illuminates so much. Folks, I'm not doing a show on February 23rd. We have covered this. Well, I'll ask you because we have a couple of minutes here, and I think we've built a rapport here and some trust. I've read a, not a lot, but there's a handful of books that have been coming out. A man named Joseph P. Farrell comes to mind about how the Nazis had actually developed the atomic bomb. Does this come down to faith, Samuel, or am I missing something? Is there a loophole or something that we can have both?
Yeah, I mean, like they probably were on the verge of developing the bomb, but they really wasn't able to do that.
Right.
And according to one research done by my colleague in Australia, that Heisenberg was one of the main scientists behind the atomic bomb project for Germany. And he made a very kind of a stupid mistake that he shouldn't have made. And
Right.
he wrote a report to Hitler that this is according to his research.
Yeah.
I don't know what. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and that doesn't run counter. They had made a fundamental mistake on what they thought they needed to do. I think that we have covered this pretty well, and we've done it in a respect. Yeah, dangers: money, politicians, journalists, and drugs, and religions. There's a couple things I do want to talk about. The advanced technology. I have believed for a long time that sound, vibration, to levitate, move stones. It explains the henges, Stonehenge, other monoliths, things like that. That was all in there, which I loved. I thought it was very interesting. There's two more things. I thought it was very interesting. They give him a piece of headgear, an eye covering, because the colors are so vibrant and have sound and all that. Even as an 80th incarnation, he would be overwhelmed. And that sounds to me like the natural hallucinogenics, natural, because I know they're questioning against drug, but DMT, psilocybin, mescaline, that kind of jumped for me. Do you feel like that's legitimate, that comparison?
I think nature or natural effects are okay, but what
Right.
kind of what makes it dangerous is that anything that kind of affects the astral body, the
Right.
hallucinogenic drugs, that has to be seriously reconsidered, because those are going to cause damages in the future generations on the astral body.
Right.
But I think the lights and the colors are beneficial in a way that it stimulates the certain points on the body. And I'm actually trying to develop color therapy clothing.
Oh, that's wonderful. So let's end with the secret, the thing you wanted to know, the thing that really motivated you. Michel did share with you some of the things that he had to hold back. Yes.
Yes.
And you are not authorized to tell those secrets at this
Right.
time.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so a couple of questions. One, do you have any way of knowing how many people also know the secret beside you?
No one else. I verified again and again
Wow.
and again. No one else.
Now, and just say, Joey, I can't even begin to answer this question. Is there any authorization for you or anything that a time will come or a sign will happen or something will happen that you will share the secret?
Probably not. But I gave as
Okay.
many clues as possible in my article, in one of the articles that I wrote.
Okay.
And people will, I don't know how people feel about that, but that's the best that I can do. The information that he told me was very, very specific, just like everything written in the book is so specific. It's
Okay.
not a general idea or something like a Mayan calendar or something like that. It's very, very specific.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be the first one to read it. I was not aware of this article. Where can folks find this article?
It's on my website under the article of frequently asked questions. And then down below, there's an article about relating to something I talk about the revelation in the Bible.
Okay.
And also like the second coming of Christ, something like that.
Oh, okay. So what is your website?
So it's chinasona.org/Thiaoouba with a capital letter T.
Okay, say that again for me again.
Chinasona.org/
Spell that.
Yeah.
Spell that for me.
CHINASONA.org/ Thiaoouba, THIAOOUBA with the
Okay.
capital letter T.
A capital letter T. Okay. Well, I am going to go read that. So, with the red heifers coming back to Israel and some of these other things that we're hearing, do you feel like Revelation is beginning to show itself, so to speak?
I mean, I think the revelation in the Bible is just people's imagination, and there are
Okay.
just a few verses that are kind of accurate, but most of them is just imagination.
Okay.
And I think people should really focus more on their own life and how to respond to the current and future challenges, financial relationship, and really need to open their eyes to see what's really going on around the world. This book actually gives a solution. It's different from other books. The other books are just telling you like what happened and things that happened in the past. But this book actually gives us a solution, which is to follow the steps of Gandhi or Martin Luther King, using nonviolent resistance to voice our opinions. We see nowadays, like with the media, like I guess most of your audience don't read the mainstream media, and that's good. But for people who read the mainstream media or follow them, they should really have more independent thinkings or thoughts and to look behind everything. When time comes, we really need to act together in a concerted fashion, and also to really, in a nonviolent way, to change everything. Because, you read a book, they took great pain to invite Archie, the ET from the other planet, to come to Thiaoouba to show and to tell Michel Desmarquet what happened on their planet, how they went against the totalitarian regime. It's just they took so much pain to do it. Why that's the case? What's going to be our future? Should we imitate how Archie did on their planet? This is actually the main thing that people should discover in this book.
Yeah, that's a great point. So what is next for you and your journey with this book?
I'm trying to do my best to promote the messages of the book. And, if I didn't know about that one thing he was not allowed to write in the book, I wouldn't have taken so much time into this effort. And this is the reason why I'm appearing on as many shows as possible and to reach out to as many people as possible. And I hope other people can join me and also help me to spread the messages.
Well, when the message is important, the messenger has to be just right. And I believe you are just the right messenger for this book. So I wish you well on your journey. I'm going to go back and read that article. This is a good audience because they're doing a lot of the things you're talking about, and we're going to continue to find ways to help them do that. And I want to thank you from the top of my heart for being with me tonight.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Take care.
All right, you all, thank you so much. Food for thought. Go find this book. It is there in the / exactly how to, and in all the advertising and all, so you can go and pick it up. It's readily available. It's challenging, but Samuel is a wonderful messenger for it, and I'm going to go back and read it again and really continue to unpack it with his article in mind. So I invite you to go to chinasona.org. Thiaoouba, and read that article and follow and spread the word. Mark, thanks to you for bringing Samuel, sharing him with our audience. Thank you so much, and so much to think about here. So happy Hanukkah to everyone. It's the 5th night, I believe, and Kwanzaa is coming up, and of course Christmas. Everybody be safe with the bad weather and all of that. Next week I will see you December 29th. We're going to continue to go hard here, folks, to try to unpack this stuff and navigate these really hard times. So we're going to have Patricia Corey talking about hacking the God code and how technology is being used to our detriment instead of to our benefit, and many, many other things. And there will be things that will be controversial, but we prove on this show that we can speak respectfully because the stakes are incredibly high, and fighting amongst ourselves and getting caught up in little details. That's exactly what the powers that be want. That's all I can tell you. So pay attention. Don't look where the light is. Look where the shadows are, because that's where things are going on. Russell Brand just came out with a great video a couple days ago. Check that out about the Nord 2 pipeline and the financial. Here we go. The money, the politicians, the journalists, the religions, all at force in what is going on in Ukraine. So keep being educated. I'm very grateful for you all. Have a very Merry Christmas, continued Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate, and be well, my friends. Thank you. Take care.